Thank you all for joining us. I'm Josh Mahoney with Durham's External Affairs Division. I'm going to go over the housekeeping for this webinar. This webinar is this presentation and the webinar recording will be made available by request made to durham@miamidade.gov. Your microphone should be muted during this webinar. Please submit your questions and comments in the questions and answers chat. Questions and comments will be addressed in the chat or during the Q&A session after the presentations. And now I would like to welcome our moderator, Lauren Parra.
Thank you, Josh. Good evening, everyone, and welcome to part one of Mayor Daniella Levine Cava's Extreme Heat and Biscayne Bay Roundtable series. My name is Lauren Parra. I have the honor of serving as the director of Miami-Dade County's Durham Department and as the Chief Resilience Officer for Miami-Dade County. And I'm very pleased to moderate this evening's discussion. Definitely want to take a moment to recognize, of course, our mayor who's joining us here as a panelist. To all of our panelists, our incredible county team, the community partners, and all of the residents joining us through the webinar. Tonight, we will be discussing how extreme heat affects both our residents and Biscayne Bay, and how Miami-Dade County, tonight you'll hear specifically from the DEM department, the Department of Emergency Management, and Durham. You'll hear specifically about how these two departments are taking action to protect our residents' health, our wildlife, and our natural habitats. We'll highlight the monitoring systems, the mitigation strategies, and the truly coordinated efforts underway to safeguard both people and the Bay during this extreme heat season. This series really reflects our mayor's strong commitment to resilience and environmental protection, and it is through her leadership that we are ensuring that we use sound science, collaboration, and community partnership to really guide our efforts to protect our residents here in Miami-Dade. Our second roundtable, which we'll host in the coming weeks, will be an opportunity to hear directly from a lot of our partners, the CBOs, the academic institutions, a lot of the nonprofits that are critical in our region's ability to combat extreme heat. So looking forward to seeing many of you during that second roundtable discussion. And with that, it is my pleasure to welcome our Miami-Dade County Mayor, Daniella Levine Cava. Mayor, the floor is yours.
Thank you. Thank you so much, Lauren. I'm very excited to be with all of you tonight. Thank you for joining. And I know we have a really good level of participation. And of course, we'll have a second one and we'll hear from our community partners. And I'm looking forward to that as well. Thank you for moderating as well, Lauren. So we're going to have fantastic panelists. Of course, they're some of our wonderful team in Miami-Dade County. We're also recognizing many of our municipal and community partners who've joined us and everyone else. And since it's recorded, we hope you'll pass it on so more people can listen and learn. So this roundtable reflects the collaboration and dedication of so many who work every day to protect our residents in Biscayne Bay. We did get together last summer. We've gotten together in the past, and we will keep working together to address these challenges. I want to acknowledge especially community partners, including the Clio Institute, the Miami Waterkeeper, Debris Free Oceans, as well as our partners from FIU, the University of Miami, and Nova Southeastern, and many others. So I apologize for leaving others out. We know you're here, and we want to reflect broad participation. And all of you are deeply committed to monitoring and taking action. So this is the first part, as was described, of our Extreme Heat and Biscayne Bay Roundtable series, and we just couldn't fit it all in one session, so we're doing it twice. We know extreme heat is a growing challenge. We already started earlier in the season. We've already had many more days than we had last year of extreme heat by this time in the summer, and it does require a proactive and coordinated response. We're going to protect our residents, of course, but we also need them to play an active part. They need information, they need resources, they need support during periods of dangerous heat. And at the same time, rising temperatures place significant stress on our bay, our Blue Heart. And this is one of our community's most cherished natural resources, and it's a vital part of our environment, also our economy and our identity as well. The health of our residents and the health of our bay are deeply connected. So what happens on the land affects the bay. We all know that. And the condition of the bay directly influences the quality of life for every person who calls Miami-Dade home, as well as our visitors. So we're all in this together. So that's why we created the series. Tonight is an opportunity to share the conditions we're monitoring, the actions that are already underway, and the strategy the county is advancing to safeguard both the residents and the bay during the extreme heat season. It includes public outreach, improved coordination across departments, identifying areas with heightened vulnerability, expanding access to cooling resources, and long-term solutions like growing our tree canopy. We just had another successful tree giveaway event in the northern part of the county. Joyful. We're equally focused on protecting and restoring Biscayne Bay. Higher water temperatures can shift bay conditions very quickly, from nutrient pollution to low oxygen levels and increased runoff, all of which can threaten the seagrass, the fish, the wildlife, and the overall health of this fragile ecosystem. So I want to encourage everyone to listen, ask questions, and share what you learn with your neighbors and communities. Our goal is not only to respond to extreme heat and environmental pressures, but to prepare for these things going forward together. There'll be ample time for discussion at the end. And thank you very, very much, everyone, for joining us. I look forward to the conversation, and I'll be with you the whole time. Thank you.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. And with that, we can kick it off and do some introductions to our incredible panelists. I'd like to start with Miss Maggie Steinberg. She serves as the Assistant Director of the Miami-Dade County Department of Emergency Management, where she helps lead local disaster preparation, recovery strategies, and mitigation planning. Welcome, Maggie. Next, we have Jen Cheek, who serves as the Heat Resilience Coordinator in Durham's Division of Environmental Risk and Resilience. She works across the county to implement initiatives of the Extreme Heat Action Plan, which includes a lot of the tree initiatives that you see publicized across the county. And our third panelist is Ms. Pamela Sweeney. She oversees Durham's Water Resources Coordination Division, which is home to our natural resource monitoring programs, Biscayne Bay and habitat restoration programs, as well as regional planning activities and our environmentally endangered lands program. So thank you all three for being here with us this evening. All right, so I'm going to kick us off with our first question of tonight's roundtable. And Jen, I'd like to start with you. If you could please share a little bit about the county's approach to protecting people from the impacts of extreme heat.
Thank you. Yes. So I'm thrilled to be here in the middle of heat season, talking with all of you about this. There has been a lot of work going on, and the county's approach is both as treating heat as a public health emergency and also a long-term resilience challenge. We are working year-round to protect our residents, but we also have a heat season. The heat season is declared by the mayor, which allows us to activate a protocol during the period of May 1st through October 31st when we experience that long-term chronic high heat and humidity. So we're able to respond quickly and directly to protect human health. But we're also working year-round really to build the environment that allows people to really easily make decisions that allow them to protect themselves and their families and stay safe in their neighborhoods. And this approach was fueled by our Extreme Heat Action Plan, which was released in 2022. After a significant effort with hundreds of residents, experts, academic partners participating to develop a really strong, cohesive plan with actions and goals to move the county forward in protecting our residents and our visitors during the heat season. And we have had a lot of success in implementing many of those priorities. And we're going to share a little bit about the ones that have carried on through this year. We're on our 4th year of implementation, and things have changed a little bit. And we think that we've really made progress and sort of targeted the actions that are really having an impact. And we know that because we've seen that Miami-Dade County does have the lowest rates of heat-related ER visits of any county in Florida. So that's a big success to be proud of. Next slide, please, Josh. So to highlight some of the initiatives that are happening year round, we're really focusing on cooling our homes and emergency facilities. We want to make sure that people have access to cooling at home. We also want to make sure that we're providing public spaces where they can access cooling. We have some success in supporting people to make sure that their utility bills are affordable, that they can pay them. We have provided about 30,000 households utility assistance each year. We've tripled the weatherization and home rehabilitation services to low income, to elderly, to disabled homeowners. And early in this process, the county installed 1,700 efficient AC units in undercooled public housing because having air conditioning is not a requirement of public housing. We wanted to make sure that everyone had those resources. So some success there. We're also working to cool our neighborhoods, and that, as Lauren mentioned, is expanding our tree canopy, focusing on preserving our open spaces, our green spaces, making sure that people have access to water, to pools, water features, shade structures, shaded bus stops, that type of thing, and also using cooler surfaces so that we are thinking about our roads, our sidewalks, our parking lots, and our building infrastructure, and making sure that we're using smarter materials that are not going to be increasing the urban heat island effect and the heat in our neighborhoods. So, and I mentioned the heat season before. We are in it now, May through October, and we're going to share a little bit with the Department of Emergency Management here on how we're preparing, informing, and activating the public during this heat season. Next slide. So to cool our neighborhoods, these in green here are the existing programs, sort of long-standing programs that the county has had in order to increase our tree canopy, to preserve our trees, and to protect our trees and green spaces. So we have Million Trees Miami tree giveaways. We just had a very successful Adopt a Tree. We have street tree matching grants for municipalities. The Parks and Open Spaces Department has been doing a wonderful job of maintaining our open spaces and encouraging access to those. Our environmentally endangered lands program is making sure that we're not building over all the land that we need in order to keep our neighborhoods cool, keep the air cool. Our landscape code and manual and tree ordinances and the urban development boundary are doing the same thing, also making sure that we are developing in a way that isn't going to make our neighborhoods hotter. And we have had a lot of success since the plan was released in increasing our tree preservation and canopy development. We've doubled the annual trees planted to 16,000 a year. We've given away 10,000 trees annually. We have some of the Adopt a Tree folks on the call today who do a great job with that. We released the county's first urban forestry plan. We have a tree leader program that's really empowering low canopy communities. We're working with Citizens for a Better South Florida to implement that program and make sure that we're getting trees into the neighborhoods that really need it the most. We know just instinctually, but also through extensive heat vulnerability analysis that the county took on when creating the Extreme Heat Action Plan, that people in the county don't experience heat equally. We know there are neighborhoods with lower tree canopies, with increased developed spaces that are feeling higher temperatures. So we want to make sure that we're targeting our tree programming to those neighborhoods and make sure that they're seeing the benefits of greener neighborhoods. And we have built a lot of great partnerships with schools and faith-based organizations who have a lot of that land available for us to really leverage. So we're making a lot of progress here, and just want to make sure when we're talking about heat and thinking about heat, we're thinking in the long term, planting trees, increasing green spaces is really the county's key long-term strategy to managing extreme heat into the future. The next slide. And on to heat season. As I mentioned, we're really focusing on preparing, informing, and activating during heat season to keep people safe. We're excited this year to be in the second year of the county's outdoor worker protection initiative, where while the county had done a lot of work to protect outdoor workers overall across the county, we had some issues with the state preempting those efforts. So what we've done is really focus on what we can do for county workers. You know, we have about 30,000 employees here, and we want to set a good example and provide tools and resources that other employers can use to make sure that they are protecting their outdoor workers during heat season. There have been studies that show outdoor workers are the most vulnerable population during heat season. I think it's something like they have a 35% higher chance of actually dying from the heat than the general population. So what we've done at the county is there was an administrative order that required all departments to assess their risk. And we had 10 departments that said, yes, we have outdoor workers that need to be protected. And they, through a series of trainings and tools and templates, developed standard operating procedures for heat season to make sure that our outdoor workers are provided acclimatization, that they're not starting too quickly, and we're putting them at higher risk so they can get used to the heat here in Miami, particularly if they're new to the region. We make sure that they have specific rest breaks, accessible water, and that the reporting procedures are there to make sure people know the signs and symptoms of heat illness and know what to do if they see one of their coworkers struggling or if they feel any of the signs and symptoms themselves. So I have here WASDs, the water and sewer departments, some of their examples that they created for their employees, some signage to help make things really accessible during heat season. So we're really proud of those resources, and we do have them available for folks who want to use them as templates outside of the county. We also want to make sure people have access to air conditioning and are able to use it in public spaces. We have 60 designated cooling sites at libraries, county and city parks, and government centers. So these are places that are open to the public. And different than in other cities and areas, we are just promoting these as being available all season, the whole heat season. You don't have to wait till a heat emergency to find a cooling site. You can incorporate it into your everyday life or just encourage folks to make it part of your routine during heat season to go and make sure you check out the library and cool down while you're there. So those are all available. Those sites are available at miamidade.gov/heat. And we also were really excited this year to partner with Hope Hydration to start installing water refill stations in key downtown areas like at metro stops. We were able to start doing that before some of the big events of the summer to make sure that people can access cool, clean water to refill their water bottles in easy access throughout the county. So next slide. And it's super important. We know that people need to be informed about these resources and also be informed about how to take proactive measures to keep themselves and their families and their neighbors safe during heat season. We know that people get very sort of nonchalant about the heat in Miami because we're used to it here and it's expected, but we can't have people taking it for granted, even though heat is such a huge risk, particularly for more vulnerable populations like older adults, children, pregnant people, people with chronic health conditions, outdoor workers. You can think that the solutions are so easy, just drinking water, finding cool shade, taking a break. These are the ways that we prevent people from feeling heat illnesses. But they can sort of take it for granted. So they need to be reminded and it has to be baked into their routines. So we provide a lot of information. We have trilingual pamphlets and posters and social media graphics to remind people to take those proactive steps, to drink before you feel thirsty, to make sure that you're taking the heat seriously. And we have those available on our website as well. And we have a new weather ready website, which has sort of combined the risk of the season so people can access all the information in one place. And I think I'll stop there and turn it back over.
Thank you so much, Jen. That was a really comprehensive overview of just, I think, a fraction of what is happening here at the county to protect our residents. You touched on something earlier in your slides about an AO and some of the work happening at the county. Can you just share for some of our listeners what that AO was, who it came from, and what it really meant as far as implementing some of these safety measures here at the county?
Sure. The administrative order came from Mayor Daniella Levine Cava here today, because we wanted to make sure we were setting an example. Because there weren't the policies, the requirements outside of our organization to make sure that outdoor workers were protected. So we created our own, basically, within the county, and it's been. We found that people were, taking steps to protect their outdoor workers, but not in a comprehensive way and not in as a proactive way as really needed to be done to make sure that we're keeping people safe. And as I mentioned, it was important that not only we do it as an example and to protect our own here at the county, but also to make that information available, to use it as an opportunity to train employers across the county and to give them the resources that they need to be able to take care of their own outdoor workers. We have a significant outdoor worker population here in Miami. On our website, our heat vulnerability risk map is available and folks can take a look at it. And you can see like the most significant reddest areas of high density people who are really most vulnerable to heat are the areas where we have outdoor workers.
Brilliant. Thank you so much for that, Jen, and that additional explanation. Okay, so I'm going to shift us over to our second panelist, Maggie. Maggie, can you please tell us how the Department of Emergency Management is educating and preparing the public during heat season?
Absolutely. Thank you. Josh, could you go back one slide, please? Thank you so much. Thank you, Lauren. Thank you, Mayor Cava, for having us. I think a lot of times when people think of emergency management, they think of us when things are occurring naturally, but it is worth noting that emergency management is working year-round to ensure that we are ready, that we are prepared, and that we have all of the tools and capabilities necessary to respond to any incident that comes up, but in this case in particular, heat, which is a pressing concern. And as Jen mentioned, we've done a lot of work in recent years to develop a very robust public education and training materials, as well as to offer those trainings. We've developed an extreme weather training series, and so that covers our three biggest natural threats, so heat, hurricanes, and flooding. And so that has become a combined training now in partnership with Cleo, who is leading the outreach on that and has taken that over for us, which is wonderful. And those trainings are really a great opportunity to educate and inform the public about the risks that they face, the thresholds that they need to be aware of, the triggers and the various mechanisms that might be activated, ways that they can mitigate against this hazard for themselves and their families, and also the things that the county is specifically going to do so that they are aware of what might come. So those trainings have been a really valuable tool and have, allowed us to reach a lot of people in our community. We also have developed the Beat the Heat toolkit, which you can see a little graphic of that there. That toolkit is a collection of resources that can be used throughout the county by any department to inform their staff and also their constituents and their stakeholders. We've worked, as Jen mentioned and pointed out here, which is wonderful. We have our weather ready page, and as you can see here, those are our three main weather hazards: hurricanes, heat, and flooding. So updating and modifying those pages so they are, current and accurate information. that as a department, we maintain over 100 plans and procedures for various hazards. And so heat and the impacts of heat are certainly part of that. So we are working year round to ensure that our plans and our procedures are updated, that they're accurate, that we're training and we're exercising on all of those. So all of our staff, all of our partners are aware of how to activate those plans should it be needed, so that everyone is current with their knowledge. During heat season, we produce regular weather briefings to county leadership so that they are aware of any current or upcoming risks as far as heat is concerned, so that they can take appropriate protective actions. We maintain a 24/7 duty officer program, and we have an individual on call 24 hours a day who is monitoring for any sort of incident or alerts or notifications that may come out so that they can quickly activate and inform the public, our partners, or any county resources that might need to be stood up to respond to that. Our public information officer works diligently to send out messaging and social media posts of any advisories that may come about, as well as tips on specific protective actions people should be taking, and how they should react to that. We coordinate our response for extreme heat throughout the county, and as Jen mentioned, with the cooling centers, those are available in government buildings, parks, facilities throughout the county. We also coordinate directly with the Homeless Trust to ensure that we have cooling shelters available for our vulnerable populations as needed. And then, we would just encourage everyone to follow us, follow our social media pages, visit the Weather Ready pages. If you don't already have it, we have the Ready MDC app, which is a good one-stop shop for any sort of hazards or incidents that might occur. And that's going to be a good source of reliable and consistent information for the public. All right, next slide, please. Back to you, Lauren.
Thank you, Maggie. Thanks for that. And really just want to highlight again that ongoing partnership and working with, in this case, the Clio Institute, to make sure that we're really meeting people where they are and reaching them with the information and the messengers that are going to make sure that they get this information. So thank you for that.
Sure.
Maggie, you and your team just came off a huge success. The county just came off of a huge success of hosting multiple World Cup games. And so we were hoping that you could tell us just a little bit about how Miami-Dade worked to protect fans during these incredible global events. We have people not just from this county, but people from every corner of the world who maybe are not as familiar with the impacts of extreme heat.
I should get off mute first. That would help. Yes, thank you so much. Josh, could I have the next slide, please? Thank you. So as you guys know, as I just mentioned, right, we're preparing, we're resourcing, and we're coordinating throughout the year so that we're ready for any potential heat-related incident that might come up. But as part of our planning and preparedness, we also are mindful that Miami-Dade is a unique place, and we have things that strain our resources and increase our vulnerability and our risk, things like the World Cup, right? So these large special events that bring tens of thousands of visitors and people from other places that may not be as familiar with what our heat entails and how that's going to impact them. So the World Cup was a massive, massive undertaking of planning, and that took many years in the making. But as one of the entities here in the host city, we spent a lot of time preparing and planning for the impacts of heat, since that is definitely our number one threat that we were concerned about and risk for the people that would be participating. So this planning, like I said, we were in constant coordination with FIFA as well as with the National Weather Service in the lead up to the World Cup. So we worked closely with FIFA and the National Weather Service on the thresholds that would be used and the triggers that would be used throughout the games, the matches, in order to trigger a heat emergency. So we worked on those heat advisory thresholds collectively. We had extensive signage throughout the venues, not only at the stadium, but also at FanFest down at Bayfront Park, and at areas where there were designated watch parties. We have here, as you can see, Heat is Not a Game, which was a public service campaign that we ran throughout the world before and during the World Cup, to further emphasize to the public that they need to take this seriously and, the signs and symptoms to watch for. We did training and messaging on the front end for individuals who were coming to attend, but also for everyone who was working the World Cup matches, or anyone who was involved in the planning, so that they also understood to take this seriously. We ramped up our messaging through the website, through social media posts, on the FIFA host committee website regarding heat risks, signs and symptoms, things to watch for, as well as resources and actions to take. We established mitigation measures, tangible things that we did to reduce the impact. So specifically, we stood up cooling tents throughout the fan areas. There was a lot of walking involved. There was a lot of distance people had to cover to get to the stadium. So there were cooling tents set up. There were cooling centers with air conditioning in them that people could go into to take a break from the heat. We set up hydration stations throughout, and you can see some of the statistics there. We had those hydration stations open for several hours, 3 to 4 hours before each match, in order to hand out water and electrolytes and offer people kind of a reprieve from the heat. We wanted to ensure that we were mitigating those risks as much as possible, as people were gathering and celebrating for the World Cup.
Thanks, Maggie. That is so impressive. And I know that it was just a fraction of everything that happened leading up to and during the event. So certainly thank you to you and to all of the departments at the county and the city of Miami who really did a lot to make sure that our fans were able to remain safe and protected while they enjoyed their time here in Miami-Dade County. Okay, so now I'm going to turn it to our third panelist, Pamela Sweeney. And we can turn our attention specifically to the environment and our very special Biscayne Bay. Like the mayor said, our bay is core to our economy, our identity, and really the cultural backdrop of so much that happens here in the county. So, Pamela, I was hoping you could please tell us more about how extreme heat affects our bay and the role that DERM plays.
Thank you for the question, Lauren, and thank you for having me as part of the panel. And thank you to our mayor. Really, extreme heat can set off a wave of various negative impacts, and that isn't just specific to things like fish kills, like we hear a lot about, but underneath that water column, there can be a lot of changes in metabolic function. If we want to go to that first graphic, we can kind of see in a moment just how quickly things can shift and change over time and how they have. But we know that reproductive cycles can be affected, migration of different kinds of species of animals. Seagrasses have thresholds for heat limits. Algal blooms can be sparked, which can, of course, themselves offset negative impacts in our bay. And really also just geochemical processes that happen in the sediment, like our carbon usually can act as a sink, but can really act as a source for releasing greenhouse gases when heat is threatening the way that those functions should carry out. And what's really interesting is that this isn't just something that we're seeing, of course, here in our bay, in Biscayne Bay, but really globally. And this is just a piece that I'm pulling from one of our staff members, Dr. Edward Castaneda, who shared this recently as part of a larger, broader work. And we know that Biscayne Bay and Florida Bay are sort of on a very similar trajectory, but that trajectory actually tells us that our global warming of oceans is actually happening at a slower rate than even just our coastal oceans are, our coastal estuaries and bays. And so that's pretty alarming. And as you can see here, global oceans have increased over the last 20 years from 2003 to 2023, 0.14 degrees Celsius, whereas Florida Bay and Biscayne Bay really look like triple or even quadruple that, with increasing 3/4 of a degree Celsius in just the same amount of time. And really, to put this in perspective, since a lot of us don't think in Celsius here, when you think about 26.5 degrees Celsius, like you see on the left of your screen here, that's about 80 degrees. And so you're changing a whole half a degree in 20 years versus something like our global ocean temperatures changing just 0.2 of a degree in the same amount of time. Where we are seeing Biscayne Bay these days is shifting, and Manatee Bay and our southern estuaries, for example, we're finding those temperatures, as you can see here, are upwards of 32 to 38 degrees Celsius, which is really something more like 90 to 100 degrees Fahrenheit, to put that in perspective. And next slide, please. And the focus here is really just to talk a little bit more about extreme heat in the water column. And I wanted to just point out that one of the things we grapple with the most, of course, is how oxygen can be affected in the water column. But really, there's a couple other things that can really be affected that we do see the effects of here in our bay. And that can be not just temperature, which we'll talk about in a moment, but the ways in which photosynthesis of our seagrasses can't necessarily replenish that amount of oxygen because it itself is impacted by heat. Our seagrasses are impacted by heat. Salinity has a relationship to all of these things. So as we have lower salinities and lower dissolved oxygen water coming in from the land side, especially during the rainy season, that also doesn't help because you're not increasing the amount of oxygen being received in our bay. But really, this is meant to just illustrate for our audience that the higher the temperature, the lower dissolved oxygen in the water column. And that's really just because warmer water holds less oxygen available. And when you have less oxygen available in the water column that's escaping to the atmosphere because it just creates a lot of energy between those molecules, it's hard to get it back. And next slide. And I'd say, Lauren, to wrap up that question, extreme heat becomes an even bigger problem for the bay when the bay is already stressed and when the bay is already in a state of less resilience than it would otherwise need to be to withstand these kinds of incidents over the summertime. And that's largely because the lungs of our bay, our seagrasses, have suffered impacts over the last decade or so. This is a picture of the Julia Tuttle Basin, which is bordered by the Julia Tuttle Causeway to the north and 79th Street. And this is the effect of nutrients over time impacting seagrass, which is sort of its own story to tell. But when the lungs of the bay are seagrasses that photosynthesize and give us oxygen, just like trees or other grasses would on the upland, that means we have less oxygen available in the water column that's being produced. And when you add that extreme heat, that extreme air temperature affecting the water temperature, you just simply have less oxygen available in the water column. And a lot of folks on our call might have experienced seeing fish kills either late into the evening, maybe on a dog walk or walking around your neighborhood, or first thing in the morning. And that's also because, as you see on the bottom left of your screen, that's really when during the night when respiration happens for our fish and wildlife. That's when those animals are doing their thing and consuming oxygen in the water column, whereas during the day, seagrasses are photosynthesizing, giving us oxygen, and you tend to see those issues persist more in the darkness. And so there's a drop naturally of DO during the nighttime times, which is just exacerbated by existing low DO in the water column. So extreme heat can have a really big impact.
Thanks for that, Pamela. We've got a couple questions for you because we had a lot of interest in how extreme heat does impact our bay. So I'm going to keep going here with you as our panelist. What is Miami-Dade County's role during a fish kill, and what does the response look like?
Absolutely. If we can go to the next slide. We have a pretty robust system of responding depending on the conditions that are being reported. At the highest level, we think of these things as sort of a non-tidal, or if it's a water body not connected to our bay, or if it is a water body that's tidal and connected to our bay. If you're a non-tidal water body, let's say a lake behind a series of homes that might be managed by an HOA, for example, or a shoreline along a canal behind a water control structure. Those are very different scenarios. And so if you're non-tidal, maybe again, that example of like a lake or a pond, a stormwater feature, maybe behind a series of homes, we'll connect with our pollution regulation division who receives the complaints from the public. And that entity, together with us here at Durham, will think through what we need to do to respond. And there'll be some internal and external coordination. We'll let FWC know through their fish kill hotline, or often we'll get a call from FWC's fish kill hotline if they're getting calls from the public. And we'll often also work with the Department of Health or even the Water Management District, depending on the conditions at hand. And we also look at how major the issue is. So in the top right corner of your screen, you'll see we have sort of a minor, a moderate, and a major condition. And so this also bears on what kind of resources we need to bring to the situation. Sometimes it is a matter of a feature not being managed in a way that is conducive to a healthy environment if it's sort of an unattached feature to the bay. But when you're talking about the bay itself or the canals that are connected to it, that's where we really initiate a much more significant response, because then it's an ecological issue happening within the system. Sometimes it is an issue of low DO, like we just talked about. It often is in the summertime. And so depending on what we're seeing, will initiate response. Sometimes we also get calls about what end up being dumps of bait fish. So it's not unusual if you get a call back from us, we might say, well, we just noticed they were all the same species and they were all kind of connected to a local fishing site, which happens sometimes. But when we're really talking about a significant widespread fish kill, we'll engage with our partners. We bring to bear all of our biologists here in Durham to go out and do proper assessments, which will include, of course, monitoring ambient conditions, what's going on in the atmosphere, what's going on in the water column, collect samples for our lab, and sometimes even samples of the fish where we work with Fish and Wildlife, if the samples are fresh enough, to try to determine how long those fish have been dead. Is there other issues at hand, like hydrogen sulfide toxicity, which is a condition that happens in the sediment when dissolved oxygen has been low too long, and it itself can sometimes cause a fish kill, that condition. So depending on what we're seeing, we'll activate different agencies, different partners, but there's always a response from Miami-Dade County when we have a fish kill, be it non-tidal or tidal. And the other thing I wanted to say about that, if we just go to the next slide, is while we do respond when we do get calls of fish kills, we're also proactive. One of the things that we engage in since the last, or really the first fish kill, but every single summer for the wet season months, we initiate a program called Eyes on the Bay. And this is where we have a series of sites we go to from North Bay to South Bay, and we will kind of monitor conditions, and we'll take a look at whether there's ambient things happening, like do we have what looks like maybe an algal bloom forming in the water column? Has there been a big rain? Are there any odors? Have we gotten any calls? And this is where we can also be a little bit predictive and say, we're watching dissolved oxygen here. It's kind of low. We might alert the city that we are in. We might talk with our internal team here to prepare to do an additional sampling. We might look to see if there's been an incident in the area that might have caused it. But we like to be proactive during the wet season, especially. And the sampling activities can include, again, collecting those physical parameters, things like temperature DO with our data SON that you see in our biologist hand here, or taking samples to the lab. And it's also important because we can coordinate. The county manages secondary canals, which are those canal systems that connect to the big primary ones that the Water Management District manages. And this gives us an opportunity to say, maybe this isn't the right time to open a particular structure if the bay is already stressed, or we also can work with our academic partners who may be out to access any information they have or instrumentation they have in the bay. So it gives us an opportunity to be a little bit more proactive, even if we can't stop an incident from occurring.
Thanks for that, Pamela. And before I ask my next question, I do just want to ask for the benefit of all of our viewers. If someone sees the signs of a fish kill, where can they report?
Well, they absolutely should either email baywatch@miamidade.gov, which we'll put up on the screen shortly. They can call our hotline, which is monitored 24/7, which is 305-372-6955. And they can also call 311 now. Environmental complaints can be received. And Lauren, it doesn't even have to be a fish kill. It could be something that's concerning, an odor, a color, something that just doesn't look right for folks that know their backyards or who visit the bay and just have a concern. So you can absolutely report any kind of environmental concerns to those outlets.
Thanks for that, Pamela.
Sure.
And on that, just building off of that, if you could please share a little bit more about what residents and even municipalities can do to help protect the bay. And of course, that does include some of what you just mentioned about really taking an active role. Balcony biologists, we like to call them, in helping us to identify and report some of those complaints.
Absolutely. I mean, there's a host of things that can be done at the level of the individual, but also communities that can start with things as simple as just uh, picking up after your dogs on a walk, making sure that you are properly disposing of your own waste, your own trash. Making sure that if you do have landscapers at your home, that they're being mindful of where the refuse is going, making sure storm drains are clear and they're not impacting that at all. And if you see storm drains in your neighborhood that appear to be um, blocked or in any way that could impact, vegetation being received by the system, and that can just basically mix with water that the next storm and kind of sit there and just break down. That also leads to things like nutrient pollution. So you can do your part to clean that up as well. But I also think that there's lots of opportunities for folks to engage in xeriscaping, making sure they're planting natives. They don't even need to apply fertilizer. We're still in our fertilizer blackout. So you also want to be mindful of the things that you're doing on the upland that eventually come up in the bay.
Thanks so much, Pamela. And for anyone who is going to get this recording forwarded to them, someone who's less familiar with a lot of this work, even simple things like scooping dog poop. We know that dog poop is rich in nutrients that we don't want to wind up in the bay. And so making sure that we're properly disposing of not only dog poop, but all of our litter is always a huge, huge help in protecting our bay. So Pamela, thank you so much for that comprehensive overview of everything that's happening Bay 101. And we're definitely looking forward to diving a little deeper in all the ways that heat impacts Biscayne Bay and our reefs offshore during our next roundtable in August. So we'll hear from you and some of your colleagues and our community partners during our next session as well. But with that, before I thank our three panelists and move into Q&A, Madam Mayor, is there any additional questions that you have for our panelists or anything that you'd like to add before we move into Q&A?
I'm eager to hear from the audience. I hope they're still with us. So I give my time to them.
Thank you, Mayor. I actually am happy to see we only have one participant drop off from the beginning, so they're still with us. They're still with us.
Great.
All right, so now we will formally begin the public Q&A portion of tonight's program. We actually received several questions that were submitted during registration. I have a copy of all of them, so thank you everyone who submitted questions ahead of time. So we're going to start with a few of those, and if any of you who are listening now have additional questions for our panelists, please submit them through the Zoom Q&A feature at the bottom of your screen, and we'll try to get to as many questions as time allows. Just know if we're unable to get to your question tonight, we will follow up via email and get you some responses. We actually also received a few questions through registrations that were outside of the scope for tonight's topic, but that's no problem, no wrong door. We will be reaching out to you and trying our best to address those questions via email or connecting you to the right county staff to make sure that your questions are answered. Okay, so I'm going to start with our first registrant question, and I'm going to direct this to Jen. Jen, is it possible to reverse the damage being done by the heat island effect?
Thanks, Lauren. Yes, the heat island effect being referenced, and I don't know, Josh, if you're able to go back up to our trees page, that could be helpful. Thank you. Urban heat island effect, for those who don't throw that term around as often as we do here, is basically the heat being generated in developed areas. So the places where your roads and your buildings and the materials there are causing it to have a higher air temperature and surface temperature than other areas that have more green space or permeable surfaces. So we our 30% tree canopy goal within the comprehensive plan is in response to counteracting that urban heat island effect. So yes, the more that we prioritize our green spaces, our permeable spaces, so that means not only planting trees, but really taking care of our swales, respecting our urban development boundary, and making sure that we're caring for our forests and our green spaces and protecting our environmentally endangered lands like the EEL program is doing, we can reduce those urban heat island impacts, but we can also at the same time have the benefit of improving our water quality as well, because those same initiatives are also helping to better filter our stormwater and protect the bay in the long run. So yes, we can definitely counteract urban heat island impacts and also improve the bay with these initiatives.
Thank you for that, Jen. Okay, moving to our next question, and I'm going to stick with Jen for this one. Another registrant asked, when will the county address mature trees being felled, as their canopy is vital to combating extreme heat?
Thank you for that question. It's been a hot topic recently. For a little background, we do have a tree ordinance at Miami-Dade County that covers the whole county. So it sets the minimum standard for any other tree ordinance that any of our 34 municipalities may have for themselves. So that does exist, and any tree being cut down does require a permit. Specifically, we don't use the term mature tree, we use a specimen tree. But all of those require a permit and to be reviewed by our team here. If you are in a municipality that is managing their own tree permitting, again, it has to be at a higher standard than the one that we have as a minimum at the county. But they are municipalities like the city of Miami that manage their own enforcement of those permits. And so we do have a big initiative going on at the city of Miami right now to review their tree ordinance and take a look at how they are managing their tree canopy. And they just released a schedule of community engagement opportunities. The county is going to be participating in that process. There's a committee that's reviewing them as well. So we're going to be hand in hand with the city looking at those requests from the public and making sure that the tree ordinance continues to meet the minimum standards and hopefully is improved in the long run. We are restricted by laws at the state level right now from changing or improving or strengthening our current tree ordinance, but there is an initiative to do that once we have the opportunity within the limits that we're getting from the state. So we definitely want to see our municipalities strengthen their tree ordinance, not bring them back. And we're going to be participating in those efforts, and we encourage everyone else to participate in those community engagement opportunities as well.
If I could add something here, I added a requirement that in the county, whenever we're doing a major infrastructure project and trees are affected, that we possible to relocate the trees. And by the way, we recently relocated a very large tree to Coconut Grove Playhouse property, which was quite exciting. So we've been working with arborists and Arba Jane, for those who, Avra Jane, if you know her, she's really into this and have really changed how we've done it. Now, I recently realized that I don't think I've done an administrative order on this. So to make sure that it's across departments. So we're going to do that. It's on my list. So please make note so that when, for example, we're providing surtax money for a affordable housing development, which was, for example, today I attended one in Miami Gardens, and all around it, beautiful tree canopy. And I looked and I saw, okay, I'm pretty sure they must have removed some pretty good specimen trees, which didn't make me happy. Of course, it's in the city of Miami Gardens. And again, each city has to at least match ours, can't be lower. But we also talked to James Reyes, now the city manager in the city of Miami, about really in lockstep moving forward. So I'm excited about that for the city of Miami. And we regularly hold meetings with the League of Cities to talk about ways that we can collaborate. And we're putting together for their annual best practices conference ways in general. And so we'll circle this one, trees, we'll put on along with water, stormwater management is a frequent one, permitting. These are some of the topics we talk about. We'll talk about trees.
Thank you so much, Mayor, and thank you, Jen, for explaining just sort of those nuances between the countywide ordinances and them really serving as the bottom, as the floor for what our cities are able to move forward in their individual cities and municipalities. So thank you for that. My next question is for Pamela. Our resident is asking, what are the updates around reducing nutrient loads from septic tanks and faulty sewer lines, especially in the north?
What a great question. What most immediately comes to mind is the effort between led by Miami-Dade County with incredible support from the Florida Department of Environmental Protection through grant funding through the Biscayne Bay Water Quality Improvement Grant to connect more homes to sanitary sewer up in North Bay with a focus on the Little River watershed, as well as the Biscayne Canal watershed. And that's really meaningful because the state saw how important it was to work with us to get those most immediately adjacent to those water bodies off of septic sooner. Of course, they're also meeting a lot of our vulnerability standards that our water and sewer department has established in terms of just likelihood of not functioning into the future. And what's been really wonderful about that is just the ability to do it as a neighborhood. So you're sort of upsetting the apple cart, tearing up roads, doing it all in one fell swoop. And trying to do our best to make that as least comfortable, as most comfortable for residents as possible with the least amount of interruption while doing the most we can for the Bay. And of course, that also sets up adjacent neighborhoods to connect if you're within feasible distance. So it really helps all, to do a much larger thing than just those immediate homes. And of course, that's part of the county's larger Connect to Protect program, whereas we're just hyper focusing on those most immediately potentially impacting the Bay, there is a larger initiative too to get more of those homes off of septic and onto sewer. Oh, and I'll say, if I might, Lauren, there's also a rebate program. So for those folks in those basins that are not immediately going to be transitioned to sanitary sewer, through the grant program, we've also are offering a rebate program to those who qualify. And that would encourage folks who, like me actually, who live in that vicinity, to make sure we're maintaining our septic tanks with some regularity to be able to pump them out, make sure they're functioning properly. But folks will be eligible potentially for a rebate to have their septic system pumped out and maintained properly. And that just allows, of course, that material, that volume to be removed and for their system to function better. So that's also complementing the larger septic to sewer program as we transition folks out.
Thank you for that, Pamela. I know that both our mayor and a few of you during your remarks really highlighted some of our local partners, but I think it's worth mentioning, like you just said, the state has really been a great partner in investments around Biscayne Bay water quality and just a huge supporter of our septic to sewer transition. So just wanted to make sure we were highlighting them as well. I'm gonna pull our next question actually from the audience Q&A. This is a great question. I'm gonna ask Maggie to answer first, and if Jen or Pamela want to respond, please do so. But this this registrant asks, the World Cup prep was really impressive and clearly worked. I'm wondering if there are any interventions or ideas that emerged during World Cup prep that could translate to help our schools, playgrounds, fields, outdoor transit nodes, etc.
Yes, thank you so much. That's a wonderful question. So I think a lot, and I think someone else may have mentioned it in the chat. So I think some people are also picking up on some of the similar concepts, right? But increasing awareness, I think, about heat risks. It seemed that I think that's definitely one thing that worked really well. And it seems like a no-brainer because we do live in Florida. But I do think it bears repeating that there are a lot of sort of sneaky things that go on when it comes to heat illness and our vulnerability to it as people, and making sure that people are acutely aware of those heat risks so they can spot signs and symptoms early. I think that's definitely something to further emphasize. We did a lot of that, like I said, in the planning, considering that there would be a lot of people here who are not accustomed to it. I know everyone talks about the Tartan army that came over from Scotland. And we joked about it, but that was, that was something that we put a lot of emphasis on, was this very large contingent of people coming from a place that does not see the same sort of climate and the same sort of heat risks that we do, and understanding sort of the unique demographics of that group and of all of the fan groups that were coming over, and making sure we're really meeting people where they were in terms of their understanding of what they were going to encounter. So I think building more awareness, right, is definitely one of the things that came out of that. Some of the sort of physical design elements of the event, I think could translate really well into our planning for recreation spaces and, playgrounds and things like that, in terms of ensuring adequate shade, adequate cooling and hydration stations, things that, maybe added features to some of those spaces. And there was another individual, I think, in the chat who mentioned sort of the conversation between real grass and artificial turf. I know that artificial turf is a very popular thing in a lot of places for maintenance and for, beautification and things like that. It's obviously been studied, and we're obviously aware that the temperature and the heat that is generated by artificial turf as opposed to regular grass, it can be significantly higher, 20, 30 degrees higher in terms of the heat that's radiating off. And so that was something, when working with FIFA and working through the prep for the games, that was something that FIFA had, sort of requested as far as, ground cover. And then, what I'll say is, as part of our conclusion of the World Cup, we're currently going through sort of an extensive after action review with the various partners. And so that's something that the county is doing at the county level, and we're also doing at the emergency management level with our various stakeholders. And so I definitely think that as part of that, we're going to regroup on what did we plan for? What interventions did we anticipate? And how well did those work? And so, I would say stay tuned. We're hoping to have, sort of a comprehensive review of everything we did and how we can, make that work better for everybody in the future.
Thank you, Maggie. Jen, Pamela, did you all want to add anything around our World Cup initiatives and anything you think we might be able to replicate post World Cup?
Just the coordination that took place across partners and departments, and specifically making sure that we are proactively addressing heat as a key concern across other initiatives and events, I think is something we can move forward.
If I could mention, I co-chair Climate Mayors group, and we've been featured all of our efforts nationally, and they have a toolkit. Do we have a link to the toolkit on our website, Heat?
I don't think we do. It's a messaging toolkit, and it's new and it's wonderful, and we can add it to the webpage.
Yeah, so I was very proud to obviously be included. So clearly the world is, and I will mention also, I was recently interviewed on 1A about our heat efforts. So you should put that there too. It's, nice short interview. And I think the punchline was that when we first created the chief heat officer, they laughed at us, but they're not laughing anymore.
That's right. Thank you so much, Mayor.
Thank you.
And I do, I just did want to highlight, I think Jen might have mentioned it, or Maggie, I apologize. The Hope hydration stations, those were launched through our World Cup efforts, but correct me if I'm wrong, those are here to stay. So I think that's, a great outcome that we'll be able to, enjoy as a service for our residents even after the World Cup. So thank you all. All right, I've definitely got more questions. You guys are sending us some great content here. So I'm going to bring it back to Jen. So I will say the question we got is, how is the city of Miami planning to reach its 30% canopy goal? But for anyone listening, I just want to remind you all, this is Miami-Dade County. We're a strong county government. We have 34 cities and municipalities, all incredible, that help make up our just, beautifully diverse and wonderful county. And so we work really closely with all of our cities and municipalities. Certainly anyone who's looking to either increase their tree canopy, put forth their own ordinances, any of that, we are here to support and work with all of our cities and munis. But Jen, I will ask you if you could tell us a little bit more about what the county is doing to try and reach its 30% canopy goal.
Yes. All of those programs that I shared earlier are contributing, and those, like I mentioned, have been in place for a long time. And what we are doing is accelerating those and making sure that we are also, like someone mentioned earlier, preserving what we have. So really strengthening the things in place. And a lot of it is we have some really great ideas and really good plans, and it's a matter of implementing those plans and also the funding, to make sure that we can fund these initiatives. We do have a really wonderful USDA grant right now for $10 million in 5 years that we are right in the middle of, and have planted a lot of trees both on the streets and in parks, and working closely with residents to identify if they want a tree in their swale, what kind of tree would they want? We're not just sort of planting willy-nilly. We're really being intentional about what trees are planted and where and what residents want, so that we can improve the survivability of these trees being planted. And we're also, I think I saw a question about survivability for adopted tree giveaways. And there have been initiatives in the past where they've followed up and been able to see that we actually have a really great rate of survivability with our Adopt a Tree program, but it is time to do another round of those analyses. And we're working with our partners at Citizens for Better South Florida and through the Tree Leader program to do some follow-up this year to get numbers on that again. But we do have the highest rates of any tree giveaway in the country, of our trees staying alive through those programs. So it's really just sort of pushing through and making sure that we have great implementation on the programs we have in place. And because we have, and adding additional support, like the mayor mentioned, we can do more within the county on our own land and make sure that we are pushing our own departments and our partners to make sure that we are maximizing the opportunities for tree planting and preservation on public lands.
Thank you so much, Jen. And I do think it was the mayor that mentioned this past weekend we had a fabulous Adopt a Tree event. This is the 25th year that Miami-Dade County, the Durham Department, has been hosting their adopted trees. Really, we're making an intentional effort to focus on low canopy neighborhoods. And so our event on Saturday took place in North Dade, close to some of the neighborhoods where we really do see some of those lower percentages of tree canopy. And so making sure that we're focusing on those neighborhoods, on those communities, and making sure we can plant those trees in the ground, and to the residents' point, really do the follow-up. I actually met someone who told us that she had a tree planted in her mom's backyard that she got from the first Adopt a Tree 20 some years ago. And we asked her if we could come to her house, to her mom's house, and take a video and do a whole social media post on the story of her tree, because we were so excited to hear that we had found one that had originated from the first Adopt a Tree year. So hopefully we'll be able to share that with the community soon. But thank you, Jen, for answering that. I'm going to come back to Pamela. Pamela, this resident asks, what is the present status of Biscayne Bay?
Wow, okay. It's a wonderful question, and there's one thing about Miamians is we love our bay. I'll ask Josh just to go back to one of the slides. It's got a bunch of graphs on it, but it makes me think about some work that we're doing where, we collect water quality samples every single month. It's part of our surface water quality program. It's what helps the state understand what the health of our bay is. Our water quality data is what the state uses. And we work together with our municipalities through our stormwater permit every month to collect this data. And so we're in it together with 32 of our 34 municipalities. And I just wanted to highlight, as we answer a question like that, that there's there are some really substantial issues with Biscayne Bay. A lot of you have heard us talk about the reasonable assurance plan, which I'll mention in a moment, but it's a way to voluntarily walk into a plan to restore the water quality in Biscayne Bay and therefore its habitats. And what gives me pause for concern, but also a lot of hope, is that we are getting a lot of support from our municipal partners, and through the leadership of Mayor Levine Cava and our commission, we've gotten a lot of support to get that initiative underway. And why is it needed? Well, when you look at the breadth of the bay from the north to the south, what you'll notice here is that the very last graphic on every single colored box is TP, or total phosphorus, as an example. And all of those gray bars just tell you in every June for the last 5 years where we are with a particular parameter. And when you think about things like phosphorus or even nitrogen, which is right next to it, TN or TP, we seem to be above the average this June for a lot of these parameters. Higher than the last 5 years, and even higher than the last the last June over the last 5 years, and in many different categories. So we're talking about phosphorus, we're talking about nitrogen, and we're also talking about temperature. So temperature, you may notice, which is the second box in every single colored box, is higher than the average. And so we are concerned about heat, but mostly we're also concerned about nutrient loading into the bay. And so I would say when we describe the health of the bay, it's definitely challenged. We have way too many nutrients reaching our bay. That is something that happens on the upland that's received by the bay. So we know that the actions we take on the upland will have everything to do with how much better the bay will get over time. The reasonable assurance plan is one of the ways that we'll get there. So we are really concerned, but we do have a plan in place that basically incorporates all of our municipal partners and individuals and businesses into the mix, so that we have a plan moving forward to reduce the nutrients that are reaching the bay. But the bay is definitely compromised. As I mentioned earlier, the resilience of the bay is compromised. We don't have seagrasses at the abundance we had just a decade ago. And so we really are challenged to bring those habitats back, which I know we'll talk about at the next Mayor's Roundtable as well.
I'm going to add a note here. So when I was county commissioner, I was approached by wonderful advocates for the health of the bay who had taken pictures to show the seagrass die-off, particularly in the north part of the bay. I was quite alarmed about it. And in conversation with so many of the advocates, I'm sure quite a few of whom are on this call, that we in fact then convened the first ever Biscayne Bay Marine Health Summit. And at that summit, I learned that in the Chesapeake area, they did the annual report card. And then I brought the legislation to create our annual report card. It stalled when I was a commissioner. And when I became mayor, it was pretty much sitting on my desk waiting for me to sign it and send it out to the public, which is what I did. And of course, now we do it annually. Thank you so much to our great team. And the Biscayne Bay Marine Health Summit has, of course, achieved great success and broader community awareness. So I just want to say this is what happens when we work together. And all of the university partners, as well as our nonprofit partners that have become such champions. And Louis Aguirre, who's going to be speaking at our next panel, who certainly has done more than anyone with his wonderful platform to raise alarm and also advocacy for the broader community to fix these problems. And then finally, I'll note the last report card did show improvements in the north end of the bay. The south end, not so much. So worse there, better north end. Maybe some of that is our municipal partners, certainly our fertilizer ban in the rainy season, increased monitoring of the bay, increased monitoring on construction sites. And thank you to so many who report plumes and things when they see them. We get right on it from construction sites. And I know there's other things we're doing as well, but well, septic to sewer. We've made as another thing that we incorporated, and I have been so adamant about, and getting funding to help us to convert the compromised septic system. So that is a major source as well. Plus, we know we have some canals that are particularly laden, and so we're focusing cleanup efforts there. So, thank you.
Thank you so much, Mayor. I'm going to direct one more question to Pamela before I bring it back to Maggie, and I'm going to try and combine two questions, Pamela, so we can get as much resident feedback as we can. So we had a pre-registrant ask, what policies are we putting into place to deal with the root causes, causes of an unhealthy bay? And one of our live questions, and I'm going to mention their name because they mentioned it in their question. Commissioner Doris Acosta is here, and they're asking, many municipalities want to do more for Biscayne Bay, but have limited resources. Are there upcoming grants, pilot programs, or technical assistance that cities like North Bay Village can access to accelerate local environmental initiatives? Thank you so much, Commissioner, for that question. So, Pamela, I don't know if you want to start. Maybe the mayor has something to add, but we'd love to hear some of the municipal coordination as well.
Absolutely. Yes, thank you, Commissioner, for the question. I think I'll start with that one. There absolutely is support. And first, I just want to say, we've had so much municipal support around our reasonable assurance plan development, and connected to that are dollars. So two things. One is, even without being in a reasonable assurance plan yet, which is that voluntary program that allows us to set forth a path to restore water quality, we absolutely, as the county and as municipalities, have access to that Biscayne Bay Water Quality Improvement Grant that I mentioned earlier through the state's portal. It should be opening up if it's not already. I believe it already is. And it should be open through the rest of the summer. And we are here to answer any questions that you may have about your projects or what could feasibly be approved. And I know the state is an open door as well, but we're happy to answer any questions, Commissioner, you may have. But the DEP state grant portal is an excellent resource. And that allows you to demonstrate how nutrient reducing projects, what you may be bringing to your city, is the ways in which it'll reduce nutrients through stormwater projects, wastewater projects, policy shifts or changes. It's a really fantastic program, and it gives you access to that. After we have a reasonable assurance plan in place, it really opens up so much more opportunity. We would be prioritized for additional state funding that requires that you are in a RAP or some sort of other state mandated program like a basin management action plan, and also federal dollars through agencies like the EPA. So there really are lots of resources available. Again, we're happy to talk with you about that, but most immediately is the state grant portal, which we're happy to get back to you on. Absolutely.
And Pamela,
the other
do you want to share a little bit about the RAP to answer the resident question really about what we're doing to actually address the root causes of some of the pollution in the bay?
Yes, the root cause question. We are, I would say, 2 or 3 big things that we're doing right now, of course, is the reasonable assurance plan, which is this massive effort we're undertaking, again, through the leadership of our mayor and our commission to basically do the heavy lift as the county up front, to get the technical expertise we need to meet the state's level of sort of their technical level of knowledge that we need to provide and information we need to provide to demonstrate how we're going to drive nutrients down, as Mayor Levine Cava mentioned, and as we've been discussing today, our canals can be a source, but really, how is that getting into the water body in the first place is the question. And so we're doing a lot of research and analysis around that with a wonderful expert team. And we expect our final draft of that document to be to the state by the end of this year, and then it needs to be approved by the EPA. So we're really excited about that opportunity. And without the help of our, we're not doing this alone. Without our municipal partners and constituents involved, we don't have a RAP. We don't have a reasonable assurance plan. So it goes without saying that our municipal partners are key to the success. So for folks listening on the line who believe in this project, you have exercise that your voice and your support in your cities. Many of them are already participating with us, but you can always find out if they aren't. If they aren't, let them know they should. But also our watershed plan. This is another initiative that the county is developing. Many larger cities, like our mayor just mentioned, like Chesapeake Bay and others, have a larger watershed plan, which is like an umbrella approach to all the kinds of things that you need to consider. Nutrient pollution is just one. How does growth management factor into the health of the bay? How does extreme heat factor into the health of the bay? How does how we manage stormwater factor in? So all of these things need to be considered, and for a nice, healthy, large watershed like ours to be restored. So getting at root causes is definitely something we're aiming at, and then how that tool in the larger watershed toolbox plays out, I think will just help keep us on the right path to keeping Biscayne Bay healthy over time. And also, Mayor Levine Cava created the Comprehensive Development Master Plan Task Force, which is something that I'm sure a lot of you heard about or participated in. And that was an opportunity to weigh in on the county's comprehensive policies on growth management. And a lot of that does entail things like, how are stormwater systems designed? What should the criteria be that we have to meet? How should we plant trees to do multiple things like help with stormwater management? So the opportunity for the public to be heard through that mayor's initiative, I think, has been extremely valuable. We actually just had a meeting this morning with our planning department to talk about the feedback from the task force members and how that can be incorporated. So that's another really great way to get at those root causes that set the policy forward for the county over time. So thanks to all of you who have participated in that as well.
Thank you. Let me mention as well, there's a flood prevention or protection plan that was coordinated through the Office of Emergency Management and Department of Emergency Management. And if Maggie could share that with everyone as a resource, it did talk about stormwater issues, for example. We know that everybody does their own stormwater management. Each city has its own utility, but we want to make sure that what goes in the storm drain doesn't pollute. And there's obviously ways that we can do that better, and we should be coordinating more so. And I hope that all of our municipal representatives are planning to attend the best practices conference coming up. And I'm adding so many of these topics to the program, the panel that we'll put together for the county. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Mayor. We're closing up on the end of our discussion here. So I'm going to ask one quick question to Maggie, and then we're going to close it out with a question to each of our three panelists. Maggie, DEM is getting a lot of love for all of the World Cup coordination and planning. So thank you again for all the leadership there. And we had one listener ask, is the county planning to add additional water stations?
That's a great question. From the DEM perspective, we are not planning on adding additional water stations, at least in a permanent fashion. But I think that we will definitely build on the success and the lessons learned from FIFA. The water stations that we had for FIFA were not permanent fixtures. They were distributed throughout the fan zone, which of course was a temporary event, as well as throughout the parking areas, the areas where people were congregating, doing watches outside along their walking path. So those particular water stations, those were temporary. But I think as we move forward, we learned a lot. Even throughout the matches, we changed our posture from match 1 to match 2, right? And match 2 through match 7. So every match, we were assessing what happened, and we were increasing our cooling and our water and hydration resources throughout the 7-game series. So I think that gave us a better baseline of what capacity we need for the future when we're, encountering another large event like this. And we will definitely use those lessons and carry them forward into the next outside event.
Thank you so much, Maggie. And I do think that we mentioned them before, while of course everything that DEM managed were those temporary structures, the county is very lucky to have been able to launch this Hope Hydration program. And so those water stations actually are permanent. And I think we're adding, someone remind me, between 7 to 10 stations along our Metro Rail line. And so those are additional water stations that we're going to host here in Miami-Dade County. Okay, thank you, ladies. I have one last question. I'm going to direct it to each of you to help close us out. One listener said, the work that your teams is doing is so impressive. How can we share more so people can learn more? And Jen, I'm happy to start with you because you're unmuted.
That's a great question. we are doing a lot of work with our partners on the ground to try to make sure that we're having FaceTime with people and having these conversations, opportunities like this to hear directly from folks, but also our partners who are actually doing the tree plantings, actually working. We have programs with Catalyst and with Clio to do trainings to help people access the support systems that are in place to get money to pay for to support their utility bills, that type of thing. So we want to take those opportunities and make sure that we're sharing more of what the county offers and more of what we're doing. There's obviously a balance there. We don't want to overwhelm people, particularly if they came to us with a specific request. But we are working really hard to provide opportunities where they can access the range of support that the county can offer. And we're also just really open to ideas too. We have a wonderful external affairs team here at Durham who have just hit the ground running recently, and they are going to be making sure that we have communications materials that really speak to people. We know there's a lot of scientific and just a lot of dense information here at Durham that we have available for people who want to look at that, but we also want to make sure it's really accessible, particularly if they just have a question about how to make their yard or their trees or their swale or their street more resilient and more heat resilient, better for the bay. So we're working with that team to create more accessible educational materials.
Thank you so much, Jen. Pamela?
So I'm going to ask Josh to put up the See Something Reported slide really quick because it's got a website on it. Not only can you find great information out in terms of what we're doing or have been doing, including, as the mayor mentioned, our annual report card. But if you go to miami-dade.gov/Biscayne Bay, you will find a ton of information, and we will continue to update this through our incredible group here at Durham that's always making our website just more accessible and full of better information. This is also where you're going to find through this website information on our watershed board meetings, on other public meetings that will be happening, including on the reasonable assurance plan. You don't have to be present for things like the watershed board meeting. You can also just watch them and give us your feedback as you see fit. But I would say you can tinker around with our website and find out information on things you can do. We've got a really fantastic program through our online report card too, where you can learn about policies we're engaging in and where you can give us feedback or ask us questions as well. So I would say this is a really great tool, our miami-dade.gov/Biscayne Bay website for information on things to come, but also if you'd like to learn more about what has been happening and what is happening as well. So that's a great question, and thanks for asking.
Thanks, Pamela. And Maggie, if you could quickly tell us how people can help to share all the great work that is happening at DEM.
Yeah. Well, I would say join us. We love collaboration. We love participation. We love when people share and amplify what we're doing, but we also equally want to hear from you, and we want to amplify your ideas, your input, and make sure that that's really integrated into the work that we're doing and the ways that we're preparing to mitigate and assist and respond to the community. It's a two-way street. So I would say join us. There are a number of ways that people can do that to get involved. We host a community emergency response team that we manage here. We offer training through the CERT team, as well as regular meetings, engagement, volunteer opportunities. We have the MD Core Group, communities organized to respond in emergencies. We would love to have you as part of that. We have our whole community meetings, which we invite all of our municipalities to participate in that, but it's open to the public and anyone who wants to participate. And then finally, we have our local mitigation strategy working group. And so this is really the group that focuses on what are our goals and objectives countywide to reducing our risk from all hazards, including heat, but any sort of hazards that we might face, so that we can have a coordinated approach across the entire county and all of our partners and municipalities. So we would love to have people join, come participate, and share their ideas there as well.
Thank you so much, Maggie. And now I'll turn it over to our Madam Mayor to help us close out this evening.
Very good. Well, this has been a wonderful program. I have learned much as well as I hope the public, and thank you for the kind words from some of our listeners here. We do this together, and it is challenging in our community to communicate effectively. We have so many different, in many ways, segregated communities. We don't share one network for communication, and we have to really find the people who share our concerns. And so clearly you're people who are part of the movement. So we want to grow the movement. Maggie described some of the ways that you could participate in disaster preparation, and it has all of these things are disaster. There, you can be a neighborhood representative for preparing for disaster, understanding the needs in your local community. People, for example, don't pre-register if they need to be evacuated in a hurricane. I mean, we're not focusing on hurricanes now, but we want to know the community and their needs so we can be responsive. We do, whenever there is an emergency, we call together people who are engaged to make sure that we're coordinating our activities. All of this that we're discussing today is about the education, the awareness, the prevention. So we want you, we need you. And apparently we don't have an active Durham newsletter right now, but we do have alerts that go out. Everyone who signed up will be added. So hope that you'll be happy to be added. And of course, this is just one of two. And we've tentatively scheduled the follow-up. So listen, those of you who are on the program, tentatively scheduled for August 14th, which is a Friday evening, not the usual time. But I'm very adamant I want to participate. And unfortunately, we're in budget season. And so my evening activities are very consumed with budget. I would much rather talk about this. So thank you so much, Lauren, for your expert handling of all of this, and to our wonderful panelists. Let's give them a big round.
That's right. Thank you, Madam Mayor, and thank you to our panelists and all of the listeners who joined us this evening. Again, if you have any additional questions or feedback, we got some great ideas and recommendations through the Q&A. Please email us at durham@miamidade.gov. And if you have a second, please do complete the brief survey that appears at the end of the Zoom session, because we do take your feedback and it helps us for the next one. And thank you to all of the behind the scenes staff, to Ariane, Larissa, Josh, Katie, Jenny Lee, everyone who helps put these events together. Thank you for helping us connect with our residents. Have a safe evening, everyone.